I don't know any better words to say at a moment like this than ho'oponopono. And I have a slightly different version, but the first thing I knew I wanted to say was that I'm sorry. And please forgive me. And I forgive you. And thank you. And I love you. And let's bless each other. Oh, it's been quite a week. And as I've shared this news, and as you have heard it, I've heard from a number of you about the grief, and it resonates so much within me as well. And I'll just say it was just never in my intention to cause such grief. And some of you feel hurt, and I'm so sorry about that. And I think there's been a number of questions about why? Why is this happening to us? Is there something to understand here? And I think that's fair. And I am trying to find, I was sharing with Jesse during the middle hour, how I'm someone who has I'm deeply guided by intuition. Sometimes I know things are true before I really understand the real truth about them, but I will do my best. And I think, one of the really, I think, unfortunate things that did lead us to this moment was my beginning in COVID, when it was still just a few months in. And I think I was trying to figure out, I'm sure that's true, but what about COVID, affected things really? And I think the thing for me was it affected my rate of meeting you. It was a lot slower. And during this time, we were doing virtual church. Some of you were there with us for that. And that was an opportunity for you all to get to know me. And I think there was a sense that your getting to know me was enough. But of course, I wanted to get to know each of you deeply as well. But a certain norm was set around getting to know one another, I think. And so when we opened back up, and it was 2 years into my ministry, and I was like, hey, we should get who are you? People are I've been coming for 2 years. And I think that's reasonable, but I don't know that it established a type of communion and sharing. And then, right in that first year of ministry, Reverend John and I were on retreat, and he got a call from your sister? Mm-hmm. Yeah, from his sister. And his sister was sharing that she was really concerned about his mother. And so Reverend John had to leave, and it turned out she died not that many weeks later. And if you have been in UUCA for over a decade, you might remember when I was the intern minister here that my mother died. Worst grief of my life. And when I came back and I would be driving around the roads, going to Whole Foods, something innocent, I would just remember that the last time I drove on those roads were when I had grief. And there were just these eerie similarities of the season and the rate and the fact that my sister called me to tell me about my mother. My grief came back so strong. I thought it had lessened, but it pounced on me like a tiger. And then I also started right in the summer after George Floyd. Oh, don't worry, I got my box. Right in the summer after George Floyd, and he wasn't alone in being taken from communities across our country, but it made everything so raw and tender, as well as urgent and necessary. It just, all of this was just a lot. And I had a committee on ministry, and they were kind of just, processing, like just recognizing all the things. And one of them looked at me and just said, Anastassia, you're just so incredibly resilient. And I think that's true. But what I wanted to be was like incredible and loving, not incredible in being resilient. And then thankfully, like COVID sort of started like lighting up, and then like didn't, and then did, and all those things. But we started the like task of going from an all virtual church, like back to this in person too, with programs and worship, and like worshiping with and meeting with COVID protocols, and bringing on new and wonderful staff, and the whole beat construction process, and like revamping entirely and successfully how we do stewardship, and bringing some new adult programming in. And all of this was good work, but it was also work of dedication, of being really dedicated to seeing this church brought back. And for me, the thing that synthesized that so fully was the return to 2 services. There was something so right in having a little bit more spaciousness to see people and give space for everyone to come in while maintaining Zoom services. And it felt like after all this work of being resilient and dedicated, we had arrived at this really good place, super good place. And I looked around, and there were so many people who had contributed to that. Ministers, certainly, but like the staff, but so many great lay people. And I just saw that questions were shifting from like, what are we going to do? Or what is the thing we want to do, to how do we do this well? How do we let these roots really mature and oversee like the growth of that? And I realized that looked like a really long-term, patient, and steady ministry like you had with Reverend Fred for all those years. And I'll tell you, steadiness and patience are not my forte. I'm from New York, and I'm so much better about being in times of uncertainty and helping find possibility in those. But when I saw that I was in this good place and what was to come ahead and all the leadership around me, I found in that arrival a kind of release. And I remembered in all my life as a strong person that surrender has always been my most powerful spiritual posture. It is what has allowed me to be courageous and accept and welcome. And I felt my spirit looking for a new openness, with new openness for joy and discovery and new beginnings. And perhaps I had been too strong, or just associated being strong here too much. But I wanted, I didn't know, I guess I had a failure of imagination of what that new beginning could look like here in a way that would suit my gifts and suit this posture of surrender. And so when rather suddenly I got this opportunity that reflected some of those gifts, I accepted from a place of self-awareness that that would be good for me. And yet, oh my, it's just not easy. And I think I'm in grief too about this ministry ending. Not quite yet, but in a little bit. but mostly about leaving you, my dear ones. And so I want to say for all the things that I know about, and for the many things I don't know about, I'm sorry. So I also want to say I forgive you, but I find I have very little to forgive. When I've shared this with some people have basically said, like, did something happen? Like, was there something we could have done? Like, just tell us you're, like, not leaving ministry all entirely. Like, and I'll say I was very thoughtful. And one of the things I asked myself quite openly and realized was there's not a single thing or a few things that any one person or one group did or didn't do that actually played a factor in this at all. It's really was from a place of self-discernment. And yet there are a couple things that I want to lift up too. One of which is, it was only in sharing this news and that I discovered something, and maybe it was in this fog of grief or something, but I was surprised by how much you all liked me. Not like a few of you who I knew liked me, but they're like, that you liked me so much. And I just want to say, it's good to shine one's appreciation on each other. You know, say thank you, say I like you, say like, oh, I just appreciate you. And I think we could do that a little bit more. The other thing is there's this wonderful poem I like called God Says Yes to Me. It's just fabulous, it's so short. And starts out like, God, can I wear nail polish or not nail polish? And she says, of course, sweet cakes, right? And it goes on like, can I be sloppy or messy? Can I write letters without paragraphs? And she goes, honey cake, my answer is yes, yes, yes. And sometimes I feel like the message that I hear often in leadership, not just to me, but kind of across the world is practice like mindful concern. Mindfulness, not like be mindful, not like in the mindfulness practice group, but like be careful, act really thoughtfully. And I think I'm someone who, I'm an Enneagram 7, I love the Enneagram test, but Enneagrams love to lead people on an adventure, and to go on an adventure, there has to be a lot of yeses, a lot of let's go, a lot of I see this, like let's do it. And I certainly went into ministry wanting to say no a whole lot less, like a whole lot more infrequently, and say yes way more often. And I think between this, what I realized is doing ministry from resiliency and dedication and careful action was less sustainable for me than ministering from a place of joy. And I do love you. And I probably didn't say that enough, so again, going back to I'm sorry. I think the thing that really struck me here is you value your ministers, but the thing you love even more is each other. Kind of reminds me of when, every once in a while, there'll be a great football franchise and they'll make a decision to fire the quarterback. And there are people who are like pissed because they love their quarterback. Like I love Peyton Manning. He was such a commander on the field. His audibles, oh. But other people had to be like, well, but are you a Colts fan or are you a Peyton Manning fan? In the end, you're always a Colts fan. You're always, well, Ravens here, but you're always on the team because you're the ones you turn to, who support you, who know your lives. And I know that's why you'll continue to show up and support this community. I want to say thank you. This is my favorite part of all of this. I want to say thank you for welcoming me. And no one exemplified this for me better than Jan and Scott, who just would invite me to spend time with them. And Sarah, who's been so wonderful at welcoming our children, and got Ben and Sadie into faith formation classes, which hasn't happened in like 6 years. And Charlie Gross, who took an interest in my daughter. So when Kent said to the kids this week, congratulate mommy, and she said, for betraying all her church friends. She has a way of cutting to the point. And then, thinking of Charlie, she said, I guess I'll never learn another magic trick. Thanks, Charlie. He says he still has one for her. Thank you for going on a journey with me in many ways. And you know, the UU Wellspring groups are wonderful for spiritual journeying into like a more mature faith. And there's so many learning about each other's lives, which are like my favorite part by far. But also everyone who joined on the Camino, my peregrinos, we literally journeyed to connection and discovery, and I collected all these fabulous love stories. I want to say thank you to the search committee and to this congregation for calling me as a minister of equal standing. Let's be honest, it could have gone terribly wrong, but instead it went wonderfully well. And it has given me more joy in ministry and more of a sense of partnership and wholeness and knowing I didn't need to be enough, which is always my best reminder. I want to say thank you for all the ways that you guys are good listeners. And my favorite example of this is Renee, who sent me an email in the last few months that said, it was entitled, Disappointed Staying Anyway. And this was because I shared in the Pathway to Membership class that I think there are two times at least you join UUCA. The first is when you're all excited and you sign the membership book, and the second is after we've disappointed you and you've made a decision to stay anyway because this is your community. I want to thank the fabulous examples of wise leadership, and Carrie Apovich-Bichelle has been so good at listening for the moment in which things need to be said and listening to understand and speaking to understand. I always value her in the room. And I should say, I'm naming specific things, but I'm naming these categories because they're all embodied in our congregation, even though I can't name every example. I want to thank you for support because Ken Apple and Karen Murphy-Cadell have given me such wise, generous coaching and support, but also at a time when I was really, really crispy and couldn't be resilient enough, which also just means I was human. The board leadership, Jane and Jan and Jen, really encouraged me to practice self-care. And I'd say most CEO folks don't think about going to their board to bolster their spirits. And I don't think I'd still be in ministry without such great partnership and kindness. And for spiritual grounding, I love my 9 a.m. group. Some of you have been like, you've really awoken a spiritual side in this congregation. And the source of that is this little 9 a.m. reflection group that meets Wednesdays at 9 a.m. We grow that within us, and we nurture that within each of us. And that's within each of you, too. And finally, I got to be part of this amazing prison ministry team who is all about the work of liberation. And the work that we did taught me that even when it seems like there is no odds for mercy or justice or compassion in the world, that one can hope against hope, that sometimes the improbable will happen, even if it doesn't seem like the most probable. And finally, I have blessed you, blessed babies, and blessed our youth into adulthood. My favorite service, I think it's like May 19th this year, so like don't miss it. I've blessed you as you've gotten married and on deathbeds and as we grieved loss. And you have blessed me too by helping me recognize that there were parts of myself that needed healing and comfort, that I could be strong and connected, and have blessed me with this incredible partnership with this minister behind me who I've never had a colleague of any kind who's been more supportive and generous and encouraging. And we've blessed each other so much that we've blessed each other into a deep and lasting friendship. So I want to thank you for these blessings and say, this is what we still have time for, to bless one another. May it be so, and amen.